What up, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. On this channel, we talk about crowdfunding and how to get your projects funded, fully funded when it comes to crowdfunding. And one of the great ways to use crowdfunding is what's called subscription-based crowdfunding, and Patreon falls into this category. So subscription-based crowdfunding is when people are supporting you on a regular basis in order to get your incredible creations out there to the world. And one of the ways that this is being used in massive quantities, tons of people using this, are podcasters, right? So we're gonna talk about how to use Patreon in order to monetize your podcast, and we're getting into that video today. Okay, so I'm gonna go through basically some different tips when it comes to monetizing your podcast using Patreon, as well as how to get started, and some just a little bit bite-sized things I think are gonna be really useful for you. So first of all, if you are a podcaster, that is amazing, man. I'm also a podcaster myself, and I think it's one of the coolest ways in order to connect with tons of people around the world, no matter where you are, right? You can be doing a podcast here in Miami, and you can connect with people around the world, or you can be doing also an in-person interview style podcast, which is also really cool, or even a virtual one. So I got a lot of information out there on podcasting I'll tell you about later. But first of all, when it comes to monetizing your show, there's one level to your show, okay, which is the actual podcast. And then there is a layer deeper. You kind of want to think of this in this way. So first of all, we're going to talk about kind of providing more value, right? So provide more value. So again, if we want to kind of think of it in kind of a structure here, you got your overall podcast, right? So you have your show, I'm just gonna say here, which maybe is doing well, maybe you're getting some different listeners, maybe you're getting some people who are talking about this on social media and they're saying such great things, right? You got your original show. The question is, how do you connect with those listeners on a deeper level and add more value to their life? So that's kind of what you wanna brainstorm with, first of all, when it comes to your Patreon. So you have your show, but the question is, what goes into that, right? What goes into it? And more importantly, what do people, I'm gonna say what goes into it, what do people want? Why are they listening? Why are they listening to you? Why are they tuning in? I really want you to take a second to write this down if you can. Why do you believe that people are tuning into your show? Why are they going to? Specifically, think of it in a problem solution framework, okay? So what problem are they trying to solve? And I'll kind of put this into context. And how is your show delivering some kind of a solution? Oh man, my handwriting's so bad. That's solution, okay? So for example, my show, right? My problem is that people just don't know how to get a campaign funded. They don't know how to market a campaign. They don't know how to get more people to support their project when it comes to Patreon, more people to actually support this thing, right? So their problem is that. My solution are some of the things that actually work in order to get people to support you on an ongoing basis or to get your project fully funded using crowdfunding, right? It's an educational style show. You may have an educational show as well, or you might have more of an entertainment show, in which case people maybe are tuning in because they want entertainment, right? They want to feel good. They want those positive vibes. They're laughing. They're having a great time, right? You want to understand what problem is your show solving in some way, and how are you doing that? That's the first step, is to really get clarity on that. When you get clarity there, then you're gonna go back to this number one question, which is, okay, so if I am providing value with my show, let's just say, for example, when it comes to tactics, tips, tools with an educational show, right? How could I provide more value? Could I provide more value in the way of written articles or in digestible information to keep people on the ball every single week when it comes to a new topic that they're trying to learn? Could it be courses? Could it be premium video content? Could it be one-on-one live stream access, right? How can you provide more value to the people that are listening to this podcast if it's an educational one? Or number two, if it's an entertainment style show, how can you provide more value that way? How can you provide that emotion that they're tuning in for, which maybe is the feeling of like, hey, this is really funny, listening to news stories. Do you want to kind of do fuller in-depth episodes to give them even more information, to give them even behind the scenes look? Think a little bit about that. How can you provide one layer deeper, more value to them? Because you are obviously confined to a single podcast format. Once you answer that question, we're gonna move to number two. Okay, so number two, right? You have this mega list, this master list of the value that you are providing and the ways in which you can provide value to this audience, right? This audience of people that are tuning in for a particular reason. The next thing you wanna do is you wanna divvy this up. And we call this kind of almost bracketing this or putting this into packages. So chop this up, provide value. I'll just say chop it up, right? Chop it up. Or create packages, right? Create packages. If you were to kind of put this into the things that people value most versus least, how would you divvy that up? And what you're gonna do is you're gonna start to kind of build this, what I call a value ladder. So it's almost like this ladder of value, right? Where it's gonna start small and people slowly go up that ladder, and the more ladder that they climb, the more value that you are going to deliver. And this is gonna lead into the next point, right? So how do you understand that? Well, first of all, what is really value, right? Value are the things that come a little bit more personal in nature, that take more time, that provide more rewarding emotional experience, or provide more clarity if it's more of an educational style show. You really wanna think about, if I could take this master list that I just designed with point one, and divvy that up and organize it, how could I assemble that into a value ladder so that the more that people go up this ladder, that the more they're getting even more value, even more deliverables that you're sending their way. Number 3 is that we're going to start on the Patreon. I'll also include a link down below as well if you want to join a Patreon, and I believe I can also gift you a little bit when it comes to that. They have this affiliate thing that you can gift new creators funds. So that being said, this is basically assembling your tiers. So we'll say Patreon tiers. And I do recommend putting this actually in a Word document before you really go on Patreon. The reason is that you can also discuss this with other people. So for example, if you're booking a coaching call with me or someone else, it's then easy to discuss and change things around before you really finalize it. You always want to kind of get a blueprint first before you actually go and you start to execute on anything when it comes to business. So you're going to go with your Patreon tiers and you're just going to start to assemble those. If you're struggling with this, a couple of things you should know. First of all, you need to decide if you want to be monthly or per creation basis. And I'll explain that, per creation basis. The second thing is I would look at existing packages. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Existing packages, okay? These are two things you want to look at when you are beginning to create those Patreon tiers. So do you want to have this be a monthly membership kind of a program where people are basically supporting you on a monthly basis in order to come out with this really cool creations, these things, these podcasts that you're producing and you're releasing to the world, as well as some of that insider exclusive information? Is it something you want to do monthly or on a per creation basis when you're coming out with specific new podcasts? So there are benefits and drawbacks to both of them. A lot of people do like the monthly option because it provides much more consistency when it comes to an income stream or a revenue stream from your actual audience. However, I also see a lot of people who might prefer a per creation basis because that way they're not obligated to be on a treadmill of always delivering value, right? And it's really based on the creations that they're coming out with. So I can kind of see an argument for both of them. So when it comes to this, existing packages, if you go on Patreon, okay, so you go on patreon.com/theme/browse/interviewers, you can go and you can see some of the different example packages that they have available for you. Basically, some examples would be Patreon for someone who's paying $3 a month, patron only chat community, ad-free versions of the episodes. For someone who's doing $9 per month, it could be video recordings as well of the podcast episodes, plus all the previous things, as well as early access to episodes. Someone who's a $25 per month patron, we could say something like patron is also getting bonus episode once per month. So someone who's, again, the value ladder, right? The higher you climb, the more value you're getting. It could be something where you're not only getting a chat access, you're getting ad-free episodes, you're also getting bonus episodes, right? You're getting access to early episodes. For that mega supporter, someone who's doing $25 a month and really contributing to you and your brand, they could then also get a bonus episode every single month. So this is a very simple stacked tier system. And again, it could be something that's a little bit more specific for your industry or what it is that your podcast is about. But it's very simple to take this, that if you've already done these exercises, and then to kind of fit this into this structure so that you can have this really nice spillover effect where the more that someone supports, the more value they are getting. Want to take all the stress out of fulfilling your Kickstarter rewards? Fulfillrite is the turnkey solution that puts product delivery on autopilot. The Top Campaigns uses trusted high-tech provider to store, package, and ship their products. Focus on growing your business. Leave shipping to the experts. Don't wait. Get a custom quote from Fulfillrite today. Link in the description. Really quickly, I wanted to give you just a couple more examples here just so that we can kind of get some ideas percolating. So another one, when it comes to the Patreon kits that they have available here, would be a sneak peek into new shows and new content, an AMA session where you can ask the creator anything, a live stream, unarchived, unreleased content, having a content locker that people can access. There are some great things when it comes to storytelling. So maybe something like live chats, hangouts, behind the scenes content, even shout outs in episodes where you're on the podcast and be like, hey, thank you, by the way, Tom or Bob or Salvador for supporting the show. Thank you so much for being a valued patron. By the way, if you're interested in joining our Patreon, all you got to do is go to the link that I'm about to mention, right? You could do something like that in order to make people feel special, in order to reward them, to highlight them. So you begin to get a sense of like, okay, this is a way I could incorporate a revenue stream to monetize my show, monetize my podcast, and not terribly very much time. And in order to do that, I want to talk about the next tip, which I think is one of the most important. So I want to mention the next tip and then I want to mention one final thing, which I think is actually be really helpful for you. So number 4 is that this is not a sprint. It is a marathon, okay? It's a marathon. So a lot of the times I'll have a coaching student come my way and they're like, dude, I wanna get this done now, which is great, you can get it done now, but they also wanna get to a certain level by next week. Most of the successful Patreon creators that I know, that I've talked with, that I've coached, it happens over time. And it's almost like a trend, right? So they're kind of introducing this community, they're growing their podcast. As the podcast is growing, they're also getting more and more patrons, right? And it kind of has this interesting snowball effect, almost an exponential growth curve to a certain degree, or I guess more of like a logarithmic growth curve where it kind of levels out at a certain point in time. But you'll see this if you go to Graphtreon, which is a great website where you can get Patreon data, you will see how creators explode over time. So this isn't something where like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, I obviously teach that. I wrote the book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. That's more of a one and done, get a bunch of funding, get a rush of funding in a couple of days for a new project. When it comes to podcasting, when it comes to Patreon, it's more of a slow climb. So you want to think of it that way and not be disappointed if you're not seeing the results in the next week or 2 weeks. Just keep with it, keep at it, keep doing what I'm going to mention next, and you'll be able to grow your show and monetize your podcast over time. The final tip I want to mention on this video, and this really is key. If you want to monetize your podcast using Patreon, this is the key, and it's not something you can just learn overnight, okay? And it's not something that necessarily is going to be very difficult either for you, but it's just something that you have to become a little bit more acclimated to, and that's understanding how to market this opportunity. So we'll just say marketing. Now, there are a lot of different components that go into marketing. Just because you have a Patreon, even if you have a small community, it doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna start making money right off the bat, okay? I've actually worked with a lot of creators who have a big community, but they're not making any freaking cash from this community. And it's like an untapped potential. And I'll be on a call with them and I'm like, dude, what are you doing, right? And I talk with them, we implement some different things, and then they start generating massive revenue streams. If you have access to people, it's almost like a strange to me why you can't be doing a business transaction with that person and adding value to their life. But the real reason why that doesn't happen, why that doesn't exist, is that people don't know how to market it. They do not know how to market their Patreon. It is not enough just to create a Patreon page, right? Not enough just to even say you have it. You really have to know how to sell it, really have to know how to market it, right? How can you position this on episodes to get people excited about joining this? What are they getting? What are the benefits? What are the cool things that are being released? What are other people saying about it? How can you incorporate social proof into this, right? How could you even incorporate different links that lead into your Patreon? So you're not just saying, hey, go join my Patreon, go join my Patreon. How could you set up a funnel system where people join your community, maybe even get their contact information, maybe you do other things as well, right? With your social media, with starting Facebook groups, etc., that you then funnel people into your Patreon community and it goes on autopilot, okay? So it's kind of like the difference, I would say, between being like a hunter that's setting traps versus someone just trying to throw their spear into that wild animal. I guess we could say like a woolly mammoth, right? And trying to just throw the spear and go for it and like, wasn't successful. It's much more intelligent and it's a lot smarter to set different traps. You can then capture all the game you need, you can feed your family, you can become a farmer, and you don't have to be moving around all the time, right? You can just be growing your crops, you be setting your traps, people come and you can feed your family very easily, right? And in that way, that kind of ties back to what I'm saying is that you need to know how to market your actual campaign, how to understand how to create systems so that even if you don't have the ability to put out a new episode to promote your Patreon, people are still always joining it because of the systems, the marketing systems that you have developed and the funnels that you have. So if that sounds interesting to you, first of all, I want to include some links if I can down below when it comes to Patreon, some free stuff that I got in terms of how to get started. In addition, you can can always book a one-on-one coaching call with me if you'd like me to take a look at your specific niche, your passion that you're trying to monetize, how to go about doing that effectively, or if you already have a Patreon campaign, how to actually level this thing up. In addition, for those podcasters that are out there, when I was getting started, dude, I was so freaking meek, monotone. I didn't know how to command attention. I didn't know how to speak well, right? And one of the best courses that I actually have teaches you how to have a perfect podcasting voice. So we talk about a lot of different stuff in order to improve your vocal quality, improve the cadence, improve all the things that go into having a really killer podcasting voice. If you don't sound confident, if you aren't happy with how you sound, and you really want to kind of go supercharge that and go to the next level, I'm not talking about changing your voice, I'm talking about really unlocking your voice, right? That authentic version of you. You're not going to be sounding like some radio DJ or something like that. I'm talking about your version of that. If that sounds interesting to you, go and check out my course, The Perfect Podcasting Voice, as well as this new book that I have that literally walks you through how to change your voice, because I went through such a radical change myself. If I can, I will link down below to how my voice sounded before and after I started to implement some of these different techniques. And it didn't happen all at once. I kind of was stumbling around, honestly, for probably my first 50 episodes on my podcast, and I sounded horrible. And I can't believe anyone even tuned in. And I was so shy and so meek and not really very confident about it. But then I started to try out some of these different techniques that I'm going to share with you. I started to document the process, and lo and behold, I was literally able to make a radical change in my voice, and I would love to share some of those techniques with you, and hopefully that they will help you in this journey, not only with monetizing your show, but also to becoming and leveling up to that type of podcaster that you really want to be. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.